Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers CBO.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for tonight's Knowledge Forum, Economic Development for Black Farmers. Our hosts tonight are Uchennaya Ogba and Arlana Brumfield and myself, P. Wade Ross. We're with Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers community-based organization. We are a non-membership nonprofit with the mission of supporting you and growing your own fresh food, as well as creating avenues to monetize your land. So before we really jump in and introduce our special guest tonight, who we are truly blessed to have her presence, we want to hit a few quick housekeeping items, especially for those of you who are it's your first time joining us. Really to reduce background noise, we do have everyone, with the exception of the hosts here, the panelists, automatically muted. However, please feel free to use that chat feature at the bottom of your screen for any and everything. We will be opening things up for audience questions towards the end of this. The first part of it's going to be kind of Q&A, just conversational format. And then we'll open it up to the audience for any questions that you may have teed up. So feel free during the questions that we ask that you use the Q&A as well to type in your questions, just in case you think you're going to forget. Also, in respect for everybody's time, we know this is typically family time. So we try to go no longer than 90 minutes. So if it hits 7:30, we're going to pretty much just do a quick hard stop. And, at the end of that time, please feel free to check your email, because we're going to get out probably in the next couple of days some type of recording of this event as well. So don't be worried about missing anything. So with that said, I'm going to pass it to you, Uche, real quick. And if you can get us started off with a quick icebreaker.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Knowledge Forum today. We're very excited. If you're new to Texas Small Farmers Knowledge Forum, we always start off with an icebreaker. And it's very basic questions, but we're going to launch the first one, and you can see in the poll. So the first question is, where are you joining us from? We're so excited that we've had people from all over join us. So if you're here joining us for the first time or you're joining us again, please share where you're joining us from. We'd love to get your responses. I see a bunch of people that are attending right now. This is exciting. This is exciting. I see 14 people, so I want 14 answers, y'all. Okay? At least, minimum. And more people are joining, so that's exciting. So please share where you're coming from, where you're joining us from. I usually give these polls about a minute. So we have about 30, we're 40 seconds in. So if you can put your questions in, and if we have everyone in, I can just stop it and then we can go over it. As well, if you want to message us on the chat, feel free to, chime in right there. It's okay. So if you want to, say congratulations to anyone, say hello, hi, it's definitely available to all. So we are at the minute mark, and I'm just going to stop it. All right, let's see where we are. Okay. Let's see. So what's going on? Ooh, okay. Palestine, Texas. Welcome. Barry, Texas. Okay. Eastdale, South Carolina. That's amazing. Wow. Wilder, Texas. Okay. Arizona, but moving. All right. I'm excited to see where you be moving to. Lancaster, Texas. Alto, Texas. Dallas County, Texas. Okay. Marvin Frink with Bryanwood Cattle Farm LLC, Jennifer Red Spring, North Carolina. All right, Marvin, thank you for joining us. We have Kansas City in the house. Woohoo! We got Pflugerville in the house. Woohoo! We got Seguin in the house, of course. Oh, that's our man Raya. He's here as well. Great. This is exciting stuff. I see a lot of people are here from all over. This is very, very exciting. I'm excited just as much as you are. So let's see. Let's go to the next one. So we have another icebreaker, okay? I like to keep it in twos. The next question is, do you grow your own food? You know, we are the Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers. We are very big on advocating for our Black farmers and ranchers to grow their own food and also create something for their own livelihood, whether they just want to create food for themselves and their family or to produce where they can produce for the masses. So this is always an exciting conversation to have. And it also gets us started. So we learn and see where you're coming from. So, oh, we have a bunch of responses. Okay, we have a couple of yeses, a couple of nos, a couple of maybes. All right. Well, hopefully we can turn a maybe to a yes. You never know. Let's see. We have Amber Smith. Yes. We have Brian Wood commenting. Hello, everyone from Brian Wood Carter Farms. Thank you so much. This is exciting. All right. I'm going to end the poll. It seems like we have all our answers so far. Let me jump right in and see where we are. View results. Okay. Okay. All right, let me explain. What am I doing? Oops, so sorry, y'all. There we go. Got a little confused out there. Sandra commented, hello, everyone. I want to grow my own food. I need a fence to keep the cows out. That's right, Sandra. You definitely need to keep the cows out of them veggies. We do not need them trampling all over. Okay, we got some good answers. We have 7 people responded yes, that they are growing their own food. We have some people say no. That's okay. Hopefully, we can turn you into growers, as you probably are here to learn more about that. And we have a maybe. Maybe that's a good place to be. I want to know what your maybe is about for sure. But please, like I said, feel free to comment in the chat. Thank you all so much for participating in this amazing poll. We have a good group of people today within us, and I'm very excited. So, Phil, I'm gonna pass it along back to you.
All right, well, we'll get the ball rolling here. I want to brag a little bit on our special guest. We have Seanicaa Heron. I'm going to call you Mrs. Heron unless you tell me to call you Seanicaa out of respect, because I'm about to read this bio here, and it's very impressive, very impressive. Mrs. Heron is founder and executive director of Freeman Heirs Foundation Incorporated, which she started herself in 2020 as a nonprofit with a mission and vision to promote the prominence, profitability, and sustainability of Black-owned farms and farmers by providing access to capital and new market entries. So I should ask before I keep going here, because we got a lot here to say. Is it okay to address you as Seanicaa or Mrs. Heron?
Absolutely, Phil.
All
Senator.
right. All right. All right. I just want to be respectful. But so Seanicaa previously served as agriculture economist at the World Agricultural Outlook Board within the Office of the Chief Economist, also known as OCE. Here, her responsibilities included conducting economic analysis, relating to supply, use, and price forecasts for livestock, dairy, and poultry products, which are published in the monthly World Agriculture Supply and Demand Estimates Report. Now, prior to that, to joining the World Agriculture Outlook Board, Seanicaa was also employed as an economist at USDA's Economic Research Service, focusing primarily in the U.S. cattle and beef industry. Now, before that, entering the government service in 2015, Seanicaa worked 8 years in the private sector, formerly employed by Informa Economics, DONE, I believe is pronounced Agriculture Advisory Services, and Pfizer Animal Genetics. Now, Seanicaa also worked in academia as an extension economist at University of Missouri's Commercial Agricultural Program. So she received her bachelor's degree in agribusiness and master's degree in agricultural economics, both from the Mississippi State University. So very, very great, strong credentials here, and we're just happy for you to join us. So I'm going to hit you with the first question now that I'm done bragging about you a bit. And I just kind of want you to tell us a little bit more about your organization, Freeman Heirs Foundation, and some of your current initiatives.
Sure. Well, before I get started, good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited to be here, to have this opportunity to speak to everyone. Thank you, Phil and team, for the invitation and your flexibility around scheduling. So, as he mentioned, all those things are wonderful and great, but it wouldn't mean anything to me without acknowledging, our Black agricultural community. Because one of the things that's not in my bio, but I always like to tell folks is that, I'm a farm kid at heart. My father was a farmer as well as my grandfathers, and we're a family that's kind of rooted in agriculture. So it was only a natural progression for me to go into the agricultural field. And so talking about Freeman Heirs, as he mentioned, we are a nonprofit organization, and we're structured to provide support to farmers of color, Black farmers, with access to technical assistance, access to capital, and I guess what makes me happy is the new market opportunity. Being a trained ag economist, that is something that's near and dear to my heart. And so we do a lot of work around helping farmers to understand the markets, but also helping them to get ready for those new market opportunities, understanding that a lot of our minority producers have never had these opportunities. And so it'll take work to get them to a place where they're able to walk into those doors. But I see myself as a bridge builder, a conduit, a liaison, someone that can help bridge the gap between Black farmers in the marketplace and allowing farmers to have the opportunities that they need to grow their business to remain sustainable. But at the same time, we also want to increase those margins. And we want to talk about profitability, long-term estate planning, things of that nature to make sure that your farming operation is solidified and that it can pass on to the next generation, and that the business aspect of owning and operating your farm is at a place that you feel comfortable, but it provides you opportunities as well. And I can talk a little bit about some of the initiatives. So, again, we do a lot of technical assistance. Our Teach programs is about understanding USDA, helping to understand USDA programs, but also around, some of those market. People want to know more about the markets now and what that means and how that can translate back to the farm. So a lot of teaching is involved and a lot of knowledge exchange is involved. I think that's very important for someone to take the time and sit down with producers and listen to their questions and answer them. And if we don't have the answers, we'll tell you we don't know that, but we'll work to get the answers for you and connect you to people that do have those answers. And I think a part of technical assistance is also facilitating relationships. Agriculture is a very relationship oriented industry. So being able to connect farmers to people that are knowledgeable in areas that my organization may not necessarily be aces in. So if someone calls and says, "Hey, Seanicaa, I want to know more about what's going on in Texas," well, it's great because then I can say, "I need to connect you with Phil," or "I need to connect you to other organizations that are doing the work and have a reputation and are credible." And then, we also work around access to capital and helping farmers to find resources that they need, whether that's through connecting them to other organizations that we have partnered with that provide some of those resources for them. And then on the market opportunity side, one thing that we are working on, we have a program called Social Mass Balance. And Social Mass Balance is a program that is centered around helping Black farmers to become integrated into supply chains. So working with agribusinesses and other supply chain distributors, whether that's resale or wholesale, and to understanding what their requirements are, what their needs are, assessing those needs, mapping out where the producers are, talking with the producers and building a relationship and helping them to understand what those opportunities could mean for them. And then, we move forward with the next step of, okay, how do we prepare you and how do we get you ready for these new market opportunities? Now, another program or area or initiative, if you want to call it that, that we are working around is climate smart commodities. I know that is a topic of major importance. I know folks have probably seen a lot of flyers, gotten a lot of emails, maybe even some people have come to your operation talking about climate smart commodities grants. So we are working or partnered with American Farmland Trust. And one thing about this particular climate smart commodity is that it's not necessarily grain focused. It's more so focused on the cattle side and thinking through regenerative grazing practices and looking at, okay, what could a potential market outlet or opportunity for these underserved communities look like for cattle that is produced on regenerative grazing practices, and making sure that that is equitable and that minority farmers as well as minority serving institutions have access to this knowledge, but also it's creating a pathway or a new avenue for the potential for a new market outlet. And so I think that that's very important. And I always like the concept of, okay, we're doing these practices, but at the end of the day, you need to have a market for these practices in order for it to make sense. Farming is very much a capital, you take a lot of money to run a farm. And so in anything that a farmer does, specifically for our Black farmers, we want to make sure that we are positioning farmers in a way that they can increase their profitability levels.
All right. So all you cattle ranchers that are listening in, hey, you heard that. There's on-ramps, there's avenues being created for the adoption of some of these regenerative ag programs that we're hearing about. So just stay tuned. It's something to definitely keep an eye on. It's something to embrace. I know I've been preaching that, but that's only because I've been in a lot of meetings. I know what's coming down the pike. So stay tuned on that. So I'm gonna pass it on to Uche. You got a question?
Is my audio okay? Can everyone hear me? I think I saw a message in the chat. Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah, I saw the message as well. It was breaking up, but I'll just check that in a second. So, Seanicaa, you've said a lot, and I'm very excited about the initiatives that you presented, actually, because it really creates the opportunity for Black farmers and ranchers to really get involved and really highlight how best they can grow their own production. So can you share with me, what are some of the, common barriers you've seen that some of our farmers have faced recently?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I guess the last couple of webinar panels I sat on, I kind of talked about those barriers. And it's unfortunate that these barriers are longstanding and historical, and that after all these years, we still haven't seen, a significant decline or decrease in these barriers. But a major barrier is access to land. For farmers that are new and beginning farmers that want to get into agriculture, production agriculture, producing for themselves, their families, their communities. Land is a big issue because without the land, you don't have the fundamentals to even grow anything. But when you think about land in the sense of ownership and generational wealth, there is the increase in the gap of generational wealth because you don't have that ownership of that land. And then also when you're thinking about land and getting into farming, you have to think about land cost and land value. So I know over the last couple of years, especially with like the housing market during COVID, it was outrageous. Prices on homes were outrageous, but I don't think people were really paying attention what was going on in the agricultural land space as well. And you saw increases in agricultural land, and it basically has risen to historically high levels. So if you are a producer that currently owns land, but you're looking to expand, that almost puts you out the game because you don't have the access to purchase that land, which kind of ties into that access to capital piece, access to funding to buy the land. But then also for new and beginning farmers, how do you even get started? If you are new and beginning farmers and you may just want to purchase 1 acre, but you don't have access to that. So I think that is a major barrier tying into the access to capital. Agriculture, farming is a very capital intensive industry. It's a capital intensive business. You have fuel costs, or let's go down the list, your indirect costs, your fuel costs. If you're doing livestock, your livestock feed costs, all of your veterinarian costs, all of your costs that are associated with your employees and your staff. You have equipment, machinery that needs to be maintained. You have other costs that are associated with farming and doing business. Let's think about like some of those costs that people don't normally consider when they're doing business until you get into it. And that's like your bookkeeping, and you're paying to have things outsourced, or you're trying to make sure that you're covering all of your operating costs. And then if you're a smallholder farmer, you may not be at a position where you are experiencing economies of scale. So there are a lot of um, there are a lot of components to consider, but not having ample cash flow when you have rising costs means that your margins are pinched. And that basically means that you have either low profitability or no profitability, meaning that you are operating your farm, but you are not making any money. And for a lot of us, that seems to be more so the norm when you're small and you're trying to get things up and going and you're trying to expand. So being in a position where you could have access to capital, whether that's through USDA programs, ag lending services, alternative lending mechanisms, that would free up space, free up cash flow for farmers to operate at a more fluid level. Fluid is a term I like to use, a more fluid level, to free up some of that cash flow. But without the genesis of that, you're still in a bind. So making sure that we have access to capital is another major barrier. But then also when we get the access to capital, I definitely have to touch on this, and Phil, I know we talked about it before, and I hope that I don't offend anyone, but when we do get the access to that capital, knowing how to handle it, making sure that we're doing great bookkeeping, and making sure that we are keeping up with our expenses, and we know what's taking place and going on in the markets so that we can be good stewards. But yeah, access to capital is another thing. And then the market piece is another barrier. When you look at it from a historical standpoint, minority producers, Black farmers, indigenous farmers have been shut out of markets, which means that they haven't had the opportunities that their counterparts have had. There are, missed relationships. And so when you have never had a seat at the table, what does that look like going forward? Those are missed opportunities. That is missed revenue by being shut out of markets. And then I have two that I kind of term invisible barriers. So thinking in terms of, like I said, access to relationships. Agriculture is very much a relationship oriented business. And then, access to, I do feel that there is a knowledge gap. Not saying that the knowledge is not there, it is, but who is going out and doing outreach and engaging with our farmers, with our producers, letting them know everything that is available to them? There is a plethora of information out there, but as a farmer, most farmers don't have time to sit down and dissect that. They don't have time to sit down and go through every agency within USDA or every program that is available through Climate Smart Commodity. But as conduits of information and organizations that, like myself, organizations that you all are working with, I think we play a very integral role in filling that knowledge gap and being able to take complex information, synthesize it, and disseminate it out to the farmers in the communities that we serve, and also bringing farmers to the table and providing them access and exposure to different conferences, different meetings, so that they also know what's going on, know what's coming down the pipe, know what these different programs and initiatives mean. What does that mean, and how will that benefit their operations, and how will that benefit the work that they're trying to do? I think that's very important. But to get it started and go back to your original question, those are still to a certain extent barriers. And so what we're trying to do is, build an ecosystem of partners that can help us eliminate those barriers, tear down some of those barriers, so that farmers can have access to the information they need. And it goes back to equality versus equity, to a certain extent. Equality, I think we use those two terms interchangeably, and they're not the same. Equality means, everybody gets a pair of shoes. Everybody needs a pair of shoes. That's equal. But equity is making sure that everyone has the right size shoes. And meaning that if I'm wearing a 7, I don't need to wear a 12. So with our farmers, it's great. Everybody has access to this information to a certain extent. I do know that broadband issues is a real thing in the South and rural communities. But we need to make sure that we meet farmers where they are, and that we help them to understand, the dynamics of the changing space that we're in when it comes to agricultural production.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. That was amazing. Well, I have a small follow-up then. I mean, I feel like you sort of answered it, talking about equity and how that's important. So how do our Black farmers overcome these barriers? And what can they do? And I know you mentioned some issues where in terms of like access to information, access to capital. So what are the steps that we can take from your knowledge that our Black farmers can follow through with?
Do you mean in terms of equity in agriculture?
I mean,
Or
in terms of just overcoming those barriers that you
Oh,
talked about.
overcoming the barriers. You know what? That's a good question, and I always like to kind of prelude it this way. I don't think our farms need to do. I don't want to, and I don't want to say this lightly, but I don't think we should be asking farmers to do anything else. Like they're farming, they're here, they show up. Of course, from a business standpoint, yes, you have to do what you got to do. But when it comes to overcoming these barriers, the farmers didn't erect the barriers. So, we shouldn't be calling upon farmers to tear them down. We should be calling upon, folks like speaking with USDA about these barriers, speaking to the supply chain or the agribusiness industry about some of these barriers that are erected and how we can work with them to eliminate the barriers. But it's not the farmers. The farmers didn't create the barriers. Now, that's in a perfect world. We're not in a perfect world. So from the standpoint of the farmers, I would say arming yourself with knowledge, making sure that you're plugged into organizations that are doing the work that can actually help you to understand what's taking place so that you can walk into these opportunities when they are available. And I know that so many of our Black farmers have heard this so many times, about resiliency and keep going and all of, those encouraging words. And it sounds great, but for a lot of these farmers, they're tired and they want to see change, and they want to see it in their generation, in their lifetime. And so I would say from a standpoint of overcoming those barriers is working with NGOs and other organizations, getting involved to make sure that they're knowledgeable about the things that are going on. And I know, like, I remember Schoolhouse Rock, and they had this Schoolhouse Rock. I guess they were like doing little songs, it was before YouTube. And so they talked about knowledge being power. And in the sense of agriculture and ways to help our farmers, that is so true. They didn't erect the barriers, but we all have to take a role and responsibility in helping farmers overcome the barriers. And so that's where I see myself and my organization, and there are other great organizations that are doing the work too to help eliminate these barriers so that farmers can have access to land, capital, market opportunities. But I do, I would be remiss if I didn't say, yes, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take not only the older generation working with us, educating us on what they went through, but also the generation that's coming behind us to continue to carry that torch and to fight for the equity that we so deserve.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm just gonna go over some chat real quick, then I'm gonna pass it on to Arlana to ask another question. But so far, we've gotten some great interaction. So we have, I believe this is Manny. I don't know, I can't see the full name here. But Manning said, wow, that they are experiencing the same issues in South Carolina. I believe they were talking about the barriers that they were experiencing. So they said they're experiencing the same issues. Derek says DFAP tax strategy if a payment is received. I don't know what that means, but I'm willing to understand that better. Derek, if you want to share what DFAP tax strategy is, please share with everyone. That'll be great. He also responds that South Carolina Black Farmers Coalition here in South Carolina have to learn to and join forces. So he also dropped the link. If you're watching, he dropped the link SB. I'm going to drop it for everyone so you can see it, because we definitely need to join forces with everyone so they can see it.
Yes, we'll be reaching out there. We'll be connected.
Okay. Yes. Harambe Heritage says, yes, I'm here in South Carolina as well, hitting barriers left and right. All right.
And I think that the barriers, those barriers are universal. It's if you talk to farmers in Mississippi, South Carolina, Texas, even in the Midwest, the barriers are still the same. And so I think in the chat, someone mentioned about joining forces. Like I do think for us collectively, that collaboration will be key. Collaboration and partnerships and moving the needle on, lessening the pressures of, but also helping to move the needle and eliminate some of these barriers.
To follow up, Derek said discrimination financial assistance program. That's what he was referring to. Arlana?
Awesome. Well, we've mentioned a few programs in the chat we know the Freeman Heirs Foundation is an amazing resource that we probably have not known to take advantage of. But do you know of any other market access programs that are out there to help out the small farmers?
And I'm going to talk about this from the standpoint of like United States, because it looks like it's people in the chat that are all over the United States, which is a good which is really great. So, thinking in terms of market opportunities, the first thing that I would say is that understanding what's available at the state level. All states have state agricultural departments of agriculture. Understanding what's available at the state level is one way to start. But if we're talking about specifics around market opportunities and relationships, let's say with distributors or wholesalers, we did a webinar earlier in the year with FreshPoint, and FreshPoint did a whole hour-long webinar on how they are working with minority producers and providing market opportunities for them. Now, in terms of certain distributors, it depends on where they're located and where their target audiences is. But I would say, and I would encourage everyone to go to our YouTube page, Freeman Heirs Foundation, and look at that webinar, because FreshPoint is a potential market opportunity for some folks specifically that are on that mid-Atlantic area, eastern part of the United States. Also, Foodbuy is another distributor that has Foodbuy, FOODBUY. They are also another distributor that is working to build bridges and relationships and doing a lot of outreach and engagement with communities of color, working with Black farmers. They will be on a part of our webinar series later in the year. However, you can go to their website and reach out to them. Or if you would like, get the information to Phil and team, and I don't mind about, making introductions because it's about exchanging knowledge and making sure that folks have access to people that can give them information and answer the questions that they have. UNFI is also UNFI is also another distributor organization that is working with providing access to producers of color. And then NMSDC has the Acres program, and that is a great program that not only, presents itself to be, I feel like, a premier in the space of helping farmers to understand the business side, business acumen, but also connecting farmers to potential market outlets through having these different sessions, learning about different things, bringing in agribusinesses to talk to farmers. So I think that's also a great way to, number one, get the education component of it, but then also number two, to also have a network of people that you can reach out to and ask questions to, and then the potential for some market connections after the fact. Cargill has the Black Farmer Equity Initiative. I think they are the only agribusiness that has such a program. So that could also be another starting place for farmers to do some outreach and to look into what could be available. You have the Black Farmer Fund that is doing great work in the northeastern part of the United States. They're not necessarily in the South or Texas, but again, knowledge is power, and they may have access to information on other market opportunities that are available. Now, I will say, with Black Farmer Fund, they're also a fund, but they have resources. And like I said, they're working primarily in the Northeast, the New York area. However, a lot of the information and webinars that they are providing can be applicable to farmers everywhere. And so I think that they are a great resource. And I don't want to leave out our land grant institution extension, because for a lot of us, they are, the conduit to providing information, or they may know about other market access or market opportunities that are available to producers in rural areas. So it's about, connecting with the right organizations, and potentially partnering with them, but also understanding who's out there and who you can go to and talk to about what some of these market opportunities are. And I will say, I know, we may be talking about some smaller farmer, medium-sized farmers, but there may be some folks at some point you're thinking long-term and you want to get into international trade or something to that extent. I think it is the McGovern-Dole program with USDA's FSA and the Foreign Ag Service. So they help prepare producers to do international trade. Also, the Southern United States Trade Association, SUSTA, which is in New Orleans, they also have training programs that are available for farmers if and when you get to the point that you want to start thinking about international trade and what that may look like for you and your operation. They have a plethora of resources that are available in a lot of trainings too.
Well,
I know I said a lot, but I'll make sure I get all of this to Phil in an email.
like I said, he's gonna have to write that down, re-listen to the recording, and get this out.
I'm gonna send the links.
Yeah, we'll get now some of just so y'all know too. Some of these programs have a little bit higher bars, on ramps to get on. We have been working with quite a few. For instance, Food Buy and Fresh Point, we've actually been working with for the past 8-9 months now. So
Good.
We're putting some stuff together to create some on-ramps, because we've learned the hard way that there are some barriers to entry for limited resource farmers. And what we're doing is we have spoken with them. We addressed those up front. We got upfront agreement to do away with all those quotas so folks like you and I can get on these and get some early wins that turn into bigger wins so we can create a snowball effect in our community. So stay tuned for that. We also are working with the Regional Food Business Center to create our own economy, when we're talking about Black farmers and vertical integration, because it doesn't just stop with food production. We all got to eat, and there's all kinds of different related businesses that are connected to agriculture. So keep that in mind. Stay tuned. Keep tuning into these knowledge forums, because we're getting there. We're already putting together some gap certification for anyone who wants to be involved. So, and that's really going to be your ticket to get in the game that otherwise we've been kind of frozen out of. So stay with us. Seanicaa she just spit out a whole lot of great avenues. So the good news is knowing that it is there, it is available. Some of them are geared towards farmers who are a little bit more experienced and have bigger numbers, but there are some on-ramps, so don't feel left out. So with that said, I'm gonna hit you with another question that you kind of touched on it, but I want you to piggyback on this a little bit more and comment a little bit more on the importance of communication and knowledge exchange between newer farmers and farmers who are, have more experience and have been in the farming, industry a little bit longer. Can you hit on that just a little bit? Because I think there is a divide. I think there is, and we do have to come together in communities. And I'm the kind of guy, I like to hit it head on. Let's not talk around it. Let's hit those issues, because it is our community. We have to come together. We have to feed into each other. And right now we're kind of at a different point in farming than we were 20 years ago, because we're not only talking about all these different initiatives, but we're also talking about, you hear words like sustainability and climate smart, and regenerative ag, and I've been in rooms, I've been kicked out of rooms talking about regenerative ag, with the wrong audience, saying like, look, we ain't trying to hear that, Phil. So can you hit on that a little bit?
Sure. I think you're spot on in there's a growing a divide, and you're talking about two distinct periods in agriculture. So for our more seasoned, experienced farmers, we have to respect the fact of what they have gone through, what they have been able to sustain and even establish in the face of, we talk about discrimination now, but what they went through, it was like in your face racism, discrimination. Some of the stories I've heard, they have gone through things that the younger generation couldn't even think of. So we do have to respect the knowledge there, and notwithstanding that these farmers are farmers that are excellent at what they do without all the formal education that we might have had and all the formal trainings, but they are excellent farmers. They understand farming in and out. So there's a knowledge base. There's the institutional knowledge and the ancestral knowledge of farming that they possess, that they can and are willing to pass on to the younger generation. Now, with the younger generation, they're growing up in a time where they have access to technology. Like, technology is innate with this group because they've had it since birth. So they're growing up with technology. Agriculture is changing, like you said, regenerative, climate smart. You have tractors that can basically drive themselves. You have all of this new technology that's coming into place, and it's exciting and it's new. The older generation, I shouldn't say older, our more seasoned farmers, they may not understand all of the technological components that are at play now, but they do understand farming. weather patterns and all the things that we talked about kind of before we got on the call, those farmers, they've gone through that and they can stand out in the middle of a field and tell you when it's about to rain. Like different things like that. But for our newer generation, they're growing up in a different time. And I think it can be knowledge exchange on both ends. You get the institutional knowledge, the ancestral knowledge of farming that was passed down from generation to generation. This is the knowledge that helped these farmers sustain their farms through Jim Crow, discrimination, racism, land loss and seizure, all of these things, and these farmers are still standing. For our newer generation, passing or being patient and helping the more our elders in the community to understand some of this new technology. Because again, like you said, from a community standpoint, we don't want to lose that institutional knowledge and that ancestral knowledge that our elders have in the community. We want to keep that. But we also understand that we're in a different era now, and we do have to change with the times, because some of the techniques may be a little, not farming, not the farmers, techniques may be a little bit antiquated for where we are in time when we're talking about agriculture right now. So I think that there can be a knowledge exchange on both parts. Now, I do understand, with some of our elders, we have to be patient with them and sit down and listen to what it is that they have to say. They'll be willing, and open to hearing what the newer generation. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be quick to adopt it. They may not be quick to adopt it, but there is a understanding and a level of mutual respect. But I don't believe that we can't just disregard that knowledge. We can't disregard that knowledge, and we shouldn't disregard that knowledge. We should incorporate it into the work that we're doing now. And, Phil, you and I have had this conversation around regenerative agriculture. It's not new. It's a buzzword now, but it's not new. If you go back and you listen to some of our elders in the community, the practices that they were using back then, that falls under regenerative agricultural practices. And so we sometimes history repeats itself, but then sometimes we have to take a step back and look at, where it is we've come from, and understanding that knowledge base, and see how we can go back to implementing some of those techniques. I did not say all, I said some, because realizing that some techniques are antiquated and we do have to change. Ag is so different than it was even when I was growing up with my dad. And I know it's way different than when he was growing up. So, times change, we have to change with them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to disregard the knowledge of the elders in our community.
Absolutely.
All right.
It goes to knowledge sharing. We talked about knowledge sharing with farmers and agribusinesses and all of these things that are taking place right now, but we still have knowledge sharing that can take place within our own communities in exchange for what's going on now, helping farmers to understand, smartphone technology, because, you can do soil samples. Soil Institute has an app where you can do a soil sample from your phone. That's something that can be taught to our elders in the community. And so I think that, on both parts, being able to bring all farmers together from all generations, because I think, we have the elders in the community. We have, I guess, I don't know the generational terms, but millennials, I think that's the folks in their 40s going into their 50s now, so they're kind of like hybrids. They're like the elders in a sense, but we've been able to adopt technology, and we have smartphones and we use them. And then you have the younger generation that all they do is technology based. And so with that being said, you have three distinct, that's like a lot of information that can be exchanged among groups of people. Why are you laughing?
Oh, there's like Gen Z now. There's Gen A. So
I don't know where they at. They somewhere. Millennials, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I don't know, but you know what I mean.
Hey, they going crazy in the chat. You gotta
Yeah.
be careful.
I know. I have a question regarding soil health, but let me go into the chat. We do have a question from Dawn, and I believe she was referencing the statement about barriers. She said, "Do we see more barriers depending on where you live? Red state, blue state? Do you see barriers?" And I
No,
think
I don't think it depends on where you live. I think that, as I said, it's universal, and that, these are barriers that all minority farmers face. And let's just be honest, it's not just Black farmers. You have other farmers of colors, our Hispanic and Latino brothers and sisters. We have indigenous farmers that are facing the same barriers. I guess the correct terminology is BIPOC, but all smallholders and some smallholder veteran farmers, they are also experiencing these same barriers. So I don't think it's a blue state, red state thing. I think it's more so of a minority producers have historically been discriminated against. And so they're still having to fight a lot of these barriers that, unfortunately, as I said, are still very common.
That's good to know. That's good to know. We have some shout outs. Alexis, she says she's Prairie View A&M Extension Community and Economic Development Agent here. New
Okay,
to her role or his role. I'm sorry, I don't know if you're he or she, but excited to serve Dallas County. Thank you so much, Alexis. And they've prefaced with learning more about ag business and looking forward to the future. Okay, we got resources being shared between Alexis and Sandra. Love it, love it, love it. Great, great, great. Linice, she says she's 29, mid 40s. Yes, ma'am. Okay. She's responding to the
Oh,
millennial Gen Z comment. Uh, Harambe says, are there any seasoned farmers from South Carolina near Bishopville looking to help out a new farmer? And Bradwood Carlson says, great topics, family. Love it, love it, love it. Okay. So now my question, I know you talked about soil health, and for me as an urban grower, I am learning so much about soil health. I thought I knew, but I don't know anything. I don't know. And I wanted to get your perspective. Can you share a little bit about why soil health is so important to us as a Black producer? And this is something I've learned recently, but I think our audience needs to also hear the same thing from you.
okay. I'm going to preface this by saying that I am not a soil scientist. I am not. I am an ag economist. However, in my own research and learning journey, I do know that soil health is a very important topic because soil is the basis or the foundation of agriculture and what you're growing. Making sure that you have healthy soils and a healthy soil biome is very important to your productivity, your yields, the type of produce or type of crop that you choose to grow, knowing your soil type, what you have in your soil right now versus what you don't have, that puts you in a position to know, hey, I need to work on this or I need to have this added. But again, I am not a soil scientist. I am an ag economist, but I do understand the importance of soil health. And it goes also back to our discussion around regenerative agriculture. From my research and understanding and learning journey, soil health is a foundation or a very important principal component of regenerative agriculture. Taking care of your soils helps in your farm productivity. No farmer wants to put seeds in the ground year after year and you're not yielding anything. So understanding where you are in terms of soil health, getting your soils tested so that you can know that will bring, benefits to producers in helping them to determine what they want to see in their long-term productivity in terms of yields. So I'll leave it at that. But I will also say you have land grant institutions that also be able to support in testing soils. But I would encourage everyone to check out the Soil Health Institute and look at their app that they have that I spoke a little bit about, but then also just to see some of the articles that they have written on soil health, the economics of soil health. I think it'll prove to be very beneficial to everybody on the call today.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Arlena?
Yes. So, you have really covered a lot of information, but you happen to mention, and I'm gonna go back to that, about equity. what does equity in agriculture mean, not only to you, but just really for all of us?
That is a loaded question. So I'll talk about it from the standpoint of me personally, and then I'll talk about it from the standpoint of professionally, if that's okay. So from a personal standpoint and growing up as a person who has very strong ties to agriculture, a very strong family history of agriculture, equity to me would mean, seeing people of color have the same access to information that their counterparts have access to. Making sure that, hey, if they walk into a FSA office, they can get the same service as anybody else. When they walk into the bank, they can get the same service as anyone else can get. And that making sure that, Black farmers are just as profitable, whether you're small or large or medium or somewhere in between. That's equity. That's what equity would mean to me. Because in the sense of where we are now, you still have large holder or medium to large farms that are still dealing with barriers of equity. Now, from a professional standpoint, equity would look like access to, and this is public knowledge, but USDA has their own history around discrimination and not being equitable. However, now they do have the Equity Commission, and they have written recommendations reports, which I encourage everyone to go and read, because I think that there are some good points that are made in the recommendations that can be applicable not just to USDA, but they can be adopted and applicable across the entire supply chain. But I think it's important for us to know what's going on and what those recommendations are. But being equitable at the federal level, at state Department of Agricultural levels, where farmers can reach out and get the information that they're needing, that there is information and knowledge sharing. But then also at the supply chain level or agribusiness level, that there is diversity in programs, and that minority producers are actively sought after, and that they are the communication and engagement there is genuine, is transformational, not just transactional. So meaning organizations, agribusinesses, not just wanting to work with farmers of color to check a box or to, for it to be transactional, but for it to be transformational in the fact that it helps, and there are those ripple effects throughout the community when you're supporting minority farmers. And so to see that, and to understand that Black farmers or all minorities or farmers of color have access to market opportunities or even long-term contracts. Because contracts, to me, I look at that as a risk management tool. And so you can, use that as a risk management tool that can also turn into helping to show when you go into for your banker to say, hey, I have a long-term contract that helps to show some level of stability, but also can help you in terms of looking at what your cash flow is. That can be a positive when you go into a bank and talking to your banker. So making sure that all the tools farmers have access and options to choose and to utilize what works best for their farming farming organization or business, and they can walk into the opportunities and not feel as though they're being shortchanged. Transparency and reporting, transparency and pricing, all of those things go back to being equitable and fair and making sure that all farmers are operating on a level playing field.
I don't know. Is it my turn to ask a question? I got one that's I know Uche asked a question earlier, kind of like what farmers can do, and you kind of touched on it a little bit there when you were talking about communication, but so often, we see farmers who are intimidated or find themselves in the what do you call that? The word will come to me, but they just feel like the language is intimidating. because it is something that they don't speak, across the dinner table. And a lot of times we have farmers who don't take the next step, whether it's, especially when it comes to monetizing their land or maybe a certain resource, and they go into an office or they go to a webinar. And the word I was looking for was imposter syndrome. It just popped in my head. But they go in these different places, and you just said it, contracts and paperwork, and they just freeze. And they just don't do anything. They kind of stick their head in the sand or just don't show back up. Can you speak to or give us some words of encouragement on the importance of overcoming that? Because I feel like that's kind of been a tool that's been used against us, an unspoken tool that's been used against us and keeping us on the sidelines for so long.
Yes, I'm gonna steal that and put that in my invisible barrier bucket because you're absolutely right. And I think that's where having reputable and credible organizations come into play, and people that you trust, that if you feel intimidated or if you have questions about language or what was said or spoken to in a webinar, that you can go to an organization and say, hey, what does this mean? Without fear of judgment, and it be synthesized and basically given to you or the farmer in that regard in a way that they understand it. Because some of this stuff, yeah, you have to digest it in bite-sized pieces because it's a lot and it can be overwhelming and it can be intimidating when you go into a space and you don't understand the language that's being spoken. So I think that's where organizations like Freeman, Heirs, Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers CBO, and other great minority ag organizations come into play with the technical assistance point or side of things, where we can sit down and talk with you and say, okay, what are your questions? And walk through what that is, what it means, and bringing a level of understanding that you may not necessarily receive if you ask during a webinar, or you may not want to ask during a webinar because nobody wants to, sometimes people just are intimidated to do that, and that's okay. But I don't think that it should be something that we allow to keep us stagnant, because there are folks out there that are willing to provide support. But it's the responsibility. Now, I will say this, is the responsibility lies with the farmer and saying, hey, I don't understand this, but let me find someone that can help me. And that can help me understand what this language is and what it means. Again, I will say, going back 1890s institutions, also 1862s, land grant institutions, reaching across the line, reaching out to extension folks. It's great to, every now and then get on Google, but Google gives you so much information, you don't know what's accurate versus what's not accurate. So in that regard, community-based organizations, minority NGOs are a great place to start, to reach out and ask someone questions that you can feel comfortable. It's a safe place and there's no judgment. But don't use that as a way to say, oh, I'm just not going to do it because I didn't understand what that meant. Like, no, let's not do that, because collectively, we need to get to a point where we say, you know what, I don't understand it, or I don't necessarily know what it means, but let me talk to someone that can help me understand what it means. And then once you get past that barrier, you feel a sense of accomplishment and saying like, hey, okay, I understand what that means. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And so now you're armed and dangerous with knowledge that you didn't previously have. But that's with anything, and I talk to farmers, I tell them all the time, no one comes into the world walking. Those are things that you have to learn how to do. So when you're walking into territories where you haven't had the access, and now you're exposed to that access, it may be a little bit intimidating in the beginning, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't belong there. You have just as much of a right to walk into those rooms and those opportunities as anyone else. And we're here to provide that support to make sure that you feel comfortable doing so.
Love it, love it. Now, Uche, it feels like we're hogging Seneca, and we need to open things up to the audience. So can we do that?
Yes, we can, and we actually do have a question in the Q&A. I believe this is from Michelle, and she actually asked a good icebreaker question. What is
Hmm.
your favorite crop? I like this
Ah,
answer. I
is that
like
for
this
me?
answer. I think it's for you, Seneca. I
You know
mean,
what? I don't have a favorite crop. I do not have a favorite crop. I like all forms of agriculture. Now, I will say that I am more biased towards livestock in general, like all livestock, because I spent the bulk of my professional career, looking and studying livestock markets. But yeah, I like all forms of agriculture. I'm still, learning a lot myself, and when it comes to like what's new, hydroponics, and you're starting to see more in terms of more information available in terms of urban agriculture. uh Now, if my father, he's passed away, but if he was here, he would be like, you better say soybeans. You better say soybeans. But I don't really have a favorite crop, but I do enjoy all forms of agriculture and learning about it and what that translates to, or what that translates in meaning to producers of color. But that's a good question. I would love to hear from the audience. Like, do y'all have a
I, I,
favorite
I know,
crop?
right? Yeah. Hey,
Like
hey,
what are you all planting? What agricultural crops are you planting, or things that you're working on? I would love to, just see what you guys are doing.
all right, audience, you got your marching orders. Write in the chat. Write it in the chat. What is your favorite crop? What is your favorite? What are you planting? What do you plan on planting? What are your plans for grazing? Let's hear it. Let's hear it. Write in the chat, y'all. And I will say a lot of chats. People are going back and forth. I love the networking going on within the chat room. This is
Yeah,
amazing. Thank you
good.
to everyone. We're sharing resources. We're sharing information. Oh,
Okay.
we have some people coming in. Harambe says, I'm brand new, but I'm looking to start an apple orchard. Okay, all right. I'd love to try some of your apples. I don't know how long it takes for apples to bloom, but I love me a good apple. Um, Okra, tomatoes, and jalapenos. Okay, okay. Some said hemp and watermelons. All right, okay. Small coffee estate. I love me a good coffee. Now, if you come up with a good coffee, I'll be buying from you specifically. So please let me know. Goats and orchids. Arlana said that. Then he says, I don't have a favorite crop, but I love anything edible and usable in every way. Flowers to fruit to herbs. All of it. Amazing. Thank you. Nick says, favorite to eat, purple cabbage. Favorite to plant, carrots. And finally got sugar snap peas to grow. Looking to get into goats. Great. We did have a webinar and we're talking about livestock and how using livestock to really ensure your grazing and your crops stay and your soil stays really good. So I love the way people are thinking here. Alexa
Oh,
said,
can I
yeah,
ask
yeah.
another
Alexa
question?
said,
I'm having trouble hearing.
my future goal
Can you
is,
say that again?
oops, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Alexa said, my future goal is to farm cattle in the future.
okay,
Amazing.
good.
Amazing. Asana says, want to sell longhorn beef as a special lean cattle.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Georgia says, okra, tomatoes, watermelon, squash, zucchini, peppers. I grow veggies to donate to local food bank where I live. Thank you, Georgia. That's amazing. Yep. Yep. Lenise responded, yes, goats, ducks, and chickens. Wow. I love this. Everybody is growing something amazing in the chat room.
I have another question for the audience, if I can, because I'm going through the chat and I saw a lot of questions, or not questions, but statements about the barriers piece. So if folks in the chat, it would be helpful to me, like, what are some of those barriers outside of, maybe some of the things that I spoke about, but are there any specifics around the barriers that you're facing or you have faced? That'll just be, helpful information for me.
Well, you heard that, audience. So please share in the chat room what are those specific barriers, because we're here to help you. We're here to assist you in every way possible. So if you can share what those
Sure.
are. Okay, Derek responded, paperwork. That's a real problem. Some of these paperwork can be what, 40 pages long, depending
Yeah.
on what you're trying to do. So it's a lot. Harambe, exactly what you spoke about, the paperwork and not understanding the language. Thank you. Derek also said FSA, USDA, two main barriers. I'm sure we've heard stories of people having those challenges communicating with the government. And if the government ever ran smoothly, we'll be in a happier place all around. But we know there are always challenges with that, so that's definitely important. Um, Labor to meet distributors, quotas, and gap
Oh,
certification.
okay,
Yes,
like
yes,
labor. Okay.
yes. Sandra said grant reimbursement and never meeting the requirements to get the dollar. Mm, isn't that a real issue we have? That is definitely a barrier. Lenny said being denied loan after loan and later finding out there is now a discrimination lawsuit against the loan institution we wanted to use. Ouch. Yeah, that's heartbreaking. So sorry about that, Lenny's. We had
Farmer
Annette.
Network.
Yeah, Annette said USDA not answering questions or being helpful. Yep, that is true. That does happen. And like I said, the biggest barrier I've seen is related to knowing where to start grant applications and lack of farmer network in the area. We're in the right place because, as you can see, there's already a network, and we hope to see you more often. But of course, we definitely want to help you with the grant applications going forward. And Manny says,
I see a hand up too. Don't forget
"Oh
Okay.
that.
yes, I do see a hand up.
Oh, okay.
Sandra, I'm gonna unmute you, okay? Sandra."
Oh, okay. Sorry, that was me. I was going to ask my question verbally because I thought it would just be too verbose to
No.
ask that question. The grant. So we, basically for our farm, we had erosion and we put up a fence and we work with the Anderson County ag folks, filled out the paperwork. And every time they would come back and say, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, we utilize the fence guy that is well known and used by some of the same people in the county, all to know that, hey, no, it's not right, it's not right. So we just gave up. It was really like $2,000 that they were going to reimburse us, but it's just the point of it, having to jump through all of those hoops when we are using the same guy that they use for their cattle. It's all a network. So I just found it interesting and frustrating. That was my comment. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Sandra. That's interesting. I would definitely like to speak with you. Maybe we can connect after the webinar, and I'll put my email in the chat for anyone who wants to connect with me after the webinar. But I would like to, check more with you on that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. And we're going down the chat as well. If anyone within our audience members have a question or want to make a comment, feel free to raise your hand and we'll be glad to unmute you. But just going down the chat room, Elena says, having to have capital up front to be reimbursed in the grant process. Yes, that is a very big challenge. Antonetta said, lack of mentorship. Yes, that's exactly what we were talking about. Having Yes, thank you for being here. This is the start. This is definitely the start. Georgia said a barrier in my community is also the lack of interest for BIPOC in our ag community from USDA. No one of color is represented in the USDA office. They seem to feel we should be at the bottom and stay at the bottom. I've been an elected official with FSA in my county and felt excluded. That is very, very shocking. Very, very shocking. Thank you for sharing your words, Georgia. Harambe, they would rather give you the $2,000 back than a loan for $200,000. Interesting. That is interesting. Arlana says, okay, she says, sorry, yeah, Sandra. And of course, everyone, Seanicaa dropped her email in the chat. Please save it. Please reach out to her. This is a mountain of information and resources that have been shared during this entire entire thing. I'm excited because I'm about to piece this video together and reshare it. So it's going to be fun working that way. But definitely, this is an opportunity to really connect with her directly. Send her your questions, send her your emails. Let's start that communication. And of course, Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers CBO is here to assist as well. So yeah, thank you all so much. Feel free to continue to share your information in chat. And I believe we
Yes,
have
this
some.
is very helpful. For me, I always like to, it's one thing for me to synthesize everything into three buckets, but it's also very helpful for me to hear directly what you're facing, but also for the community to hear what you're facing, because a lot of it, and I'm sure folks are from different parts of the country, but folks are really experiencing the same thing. It's just at a different area of the country. So this is very, very helpful. Um, and I'm definitely going to take this information back to my team and think about ways that we can help to, ease the pressure. I can't use the terminology of help to eliminate this, because this is going to take much more than one organization to eliminate inequities in agriculture in general. No one organization can do it alone. But I do think, working with a team or ecosystem of partners, not just at the NGO level, but also at the government level, at the agribusiness level, is what it's going to take to really move the needle.
All right. Well, I want to get one last question in, which you kind of was going down that road just now. How can Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers CBO combine efforts and really support what Freeman Air is doing in your ongoing efforts?
I think that goes without saying. You've always been a great supporter of the work that we've done, even when we were initially new kids on the block, and we're very appreciative of that, of having your support, because that lends a level of credibility to the work that we're doing, and letting people know that, hey, we're a real organization out here. We're doing a real work, and we want to be able to maintain the level of aggression that we're utilizing to kind of knock some of these things out the park. So thank you for that. And thank you for your willingness to support us. And likewise, the same with Freeman Heirs. We always want to uplift Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers CBO, what you're doing, introducing you to our audience and making sure that they're aware of the work that you're doing. Because a lot of the things that you all are doing is, again, it's applicable in other communities. But people just need to know where to start. So you're doing a lot of great things as far as sharing the knowledge and information, and we like to share it, but also making sure that we give you credit for it. But my hopes and dreams that in the future, in the coming months, we can sit down and talk about a more formalized partnership in ways that we can provide support to you, and you can provide support to a lot of the outreach initiatives that we're hoping to do. And we're trying, and we're thinking of ways of what we can do to bring value to producers in Texas, especially our cattle folks, and hoping that we can get some type of outreach and engagement event on the books for 2025.
Well, we're excited. We have been a few folks that you invited us out to the Minority Business Expo, and we got a chance to rub elbows with quite a few folks who
Yeah,
now have reached out to do business. Yeah, so they want to work with our farmers and ranchers and give us, and we've been pretty open about voicing some of the barriers and the need for lower on ramps to get us back in the game, because everything that you just heard today that's keeping us on the sideline, that's just real stuff. So we're doing some incubator programs right now. We're putting together some curriculum to launch that. We're doing a few cohorts that are for farmers and ranchers in the regenerative ag. Everything that we're doing is centered around business economics, business development, monetizing our land, and also uplifting our youth as well. We need to have ownership mindsets from the outset. That's something that's really missing in our community by design. So we look forward to working with you in the future. Everybody who's on here, stay tuned. Keep tuning in. You know, I see a lot of comments in the chat
Yeah.
about collaboration, and you know, we did a few boot camps here earlier, and the word we kept hearing was tribe, and that's what we're doing. You know, right now we understand. You know, and people might not agree, but we understand we can't take everybody with us. Not everybody is ready, but those of you who are, let's go. Let's make this thing happen. So I see Arlana. It sounds like you chomping at the bit to say anything, or if not, we're gonna let folks go. How about you, Uche?
I
You
have
don't have
one
me?
last thing to say.
Okay, so I'm gonna let you have the last word here, Seanicaa.
Okay, so I would like to say we didn't talk as much around the regenerative topic, but I would like to say that Freeman Heirs, along with the Foundation for Food and Ag Research and Resources for the Future, we're doing a series of 4 webinars on accessing the opportunities and understanding the barriers to minority producers adopting regenerative practices. We've already done one webinar, and that was 2 weeks ago, but the second one is August the 9th, and it is centered around the topic of soil health. And so I think that that would be very beneficial. I'll send the information to you, Uche, and you can get it out to the participants. But we would love to have you all on that call to give your insights and what you're seeing. And it'll be great for you all to talk about or put in the chat these same barriers that you listed here. And that's another resource, and that's knowledge exchange. And folks are actually out there trying to understand what these barriers are so that we can provide recommendations on how to eliminate them. And then my final thoughts was this was such a great opportunity for me, and I don't take it lightly. Please feel free to utilize my email. I do respond. And if there are ways that I can support or help you, I will. And if I can't, I will definitely direct you to the place or the persons that can help you. So with that, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this webinar, and I look forward to speaking with you all, and Phil, I definitely look forward to working with you and your team again.
All right, y'all. Well, remember, be the exception.
Absolutely. Good night.
Good night, everyone. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.